Continuing our series on the Holy Orders of the Adepta Sororitas, we've already covered arguably the most iconic one in the Order of Our Martyred Lady. But now I want to pivot on the oldest and probably most important of the Holy Orders, the one that started it all. Their matriarch holds an especially important lineage for not just the Order, but the Sisters of Battle as a whole. Alicia Dominica is the very first daughter of the Emperor and the progenitor of what would eventually become the Chambers Militant of the Ecclesiarchy. During the Age of Apostasy, Gog Van Dyer essentially recruited and brainwashed Alicia Dominica, to kind of put that down to the most base terms possible, and her followers to his ideal system, saying that it was the holy word of the Emperor. The daughters of the Emperor were then renamed to the brides of the Emperor, and acting as the personal bodyguard of Van Dyer, helping to reinforce his position as corruption spread through the Imperium at his behest. So dedicated to the Emperor, and thus Van Dyer the brides were, that when they were approached by the Adeptus Custodes, Alicia Dominica first did not trust their words. After the Custodes Centurion bade the brides to take his men as hostage, he escorted Alicia and her most trusted, or true, sisters, I guess you could say, the ones of which we've already discussed in our previous video, down to the very deepest portions of the Imperial Palace. The Golden Throne, the final resting place of the Emperor of Mankind, awaited them. The sisters were left alone in the throne room, and no one knows exactly what they were told by the Emperor, but they left with a fiery conviction that has persisted to this very day. Alicia Dominica marched up to Gog Van Dyer and personally beheaded him, ending the Age of Apostasy and beginning the Age of Redemption. We've already discussed the events that unfolded after that and how there were two convents set up, the Convent Prioris on Terra and the Convent Sanctorum on Ophelia 7. Today we will talk about the Daughters of the Emperor and Alicia Dominica. Today we'll discuss the Order of the Ebon Chalice. To begin, unlike the Order of Our Martyred Lady, our tale begins on the throne world of Terra, as this is the power base of the Convent Prioris and the home ecclesiarchal parish of the Order of the Ebon Chalice. We discussed Catherine as the shield bearer of Alicia Dominica, but Alicia herself is a very important character. If the Sisters of Battle had a Primarch, this would be the closest thing to it. She is the patron saint of the entire sisterhood and the very first canoness of the order she founded in the image of the Daughters of the Emperor. Throughout the Age of Redemption, Alicia Dominica led the order throughout the Segmentum Solar, purging any form of corruption or taint that would threaten the stability of the Imperium. And this really becomes the crux of the order. Most of the holy orders of the Adepta Sororitas range across the galaxy, with ecclesiarchal parishes all over the Imperium. The Order of the Ebon Chalice, on the other hand, stays almost entirely in the Segmentum Solar, defending the throne world. With the rise of Ecclesiarch Sebastian Thorn, we get the ecclesiarchy returning to a semblance of pre-Age of Apostasy. Truth, I guess I'll say. And there has been so much power shifting within the organization and so much tampering with what it is and isn't the truth of the Imperial Creed, that this is an age where those, I guess you could say, dark ages, as it were, are sort of dispelled. This is done with the help of Dominica and her sisters, ranging across the Segmentum. Even the slightest infractions are paid out harshly to ensure that the rest stay in line. The sisterhood as a whole is known for their staunch and dogmatic approach to the Imperial Creed, but none compare to the Ebon Chalice. This might be because of the presence of the very first Sisters of Battle, or Sister of Battle, or it could be because of the famed Grail of Ages. This ancient chalice was wielded by Alicia Dominica herself, and is rumored to possess a modicum of the might of the Emperor within it. Brandished as she swoops down on the heretic, the witch, and the unclean, the Grail of Ages can level armies of demons with its mere blinding presence. Unfortunately, most of what is written about the Grail is in hyperbole. The Order burns any mention of it throughout history unless explicitly allowed by them, destroying the authors as heretics. And it's because of this that there is a pretty big overarching sense of secrecy to the Order of the Ebon Chalice, much like what we get with the Dark Angels. I mean, there's even a point during the Spinward Front where they kind of deploy on their own and go and destroy a whole bunch of heretics and don't tell anyone about it, and just to destroy some mentions of the Grail. So they're very kind of persistent in keeping this secret. No one knows what Alicia Dominica discovered in the throne room on Terra, but it is rumored that the upper echelons of the Order are told the secrets so that it might live on, and the tenacity and passion that Dominica fights with will always be present in the Order. Again, that same sense of secrecy is mirrored in the Dark Angels, who save the inner circle to know the deep truths of the chapter. It's a very interesting parallel that might hint to something perhaps more sinister than we think. For instance, the Dark Angel's secret is that A, the lion is still alive, and B, Luther betrayed the lion. The Emperor could have told Alicia Dominica something pretty horrifying about the future of the Imperium. We really don't know. The very symbol of the Order of the Ebon Chalice is Ebon Chalice is a black chalice on fire with a skull inside of it, representing the terrible knowledge bestowed upon Alicia and her sisters. The very symbol of the Order of the Ebon Chalice is a black chalice on fire with a skull inside of it, representing the terrible knowledge bestowed upon Alicia and her sisters. So that, to me, tells of some horrible truth that was learned that had to be stopped, or it could have simply been about Vandire. But again, who knows? No one, really. Regardless, as the years moved on, Alicia Dominica ascended to full living saint, fighting at the forefront of every major engagement for the Order throughout the Imperium. Brandishing the Grail of Ages, she brought fire and redemption to the heretics of the Imperium. On the 630th year of the 36th millennium, Alicia Dominica was deployed at the Battle of Friedeswide's World. Really bad name. Leaping over the battlements of the traitor guardsmen, she cleaved her way through the foes that beset the planet. Thousands upon thousands of las bolts carved divots and chunks out of her armor, wounds stacking up, but on she fought, the tenacity of her order bringing fiery retribution to those before her. At the height of the battle, a lucky las shot passed through a small kink in her armor, slicing its way through the saint's very heart. Thus it was that Alicia Dominica, the first sister of battle, would become the first of her companions to fall in battle, defending the Imperium. With the fall of their patron saint, the Order of the Ebon Chalice has in no way become diminished over these many years, fighting in the name of the Emperor. Clasping forearms with the best of them, the Ebon Chalice continues to root out the Segmentum Solar of any form of corruption. One thing that really stands out for me when it comes to the Sisters of Battle is the many engagements that they find themselves pitted in throughout the stars. Remember, these are the halfway point between Imperial Guardsmen and Space Marines, but with the tenacity and conviction and faith of the Grey Knights. They're a very interesting army, and because of that, their engagements aren't these sweeping tales of outlasting against overwhelming odds. Sometimes they just lose outright, and I think that's what makes them more badass. When we look at the Magdalene Prime Civil War in the 143rd year of the 41st millennium, we see an instance where the cult of Balthalomus was responsible for destabilizing the populace of Magdalene Prime. The ensuing civil war led to a number of essentially terrorist attacks against the Preceptory Reclusium of the Order of the Ebon Chalice on the planet. The Order was then besieged by a ravening horde of rebels and cult members alike. But by the time the three elements of Space Marines landed on the planet to aid the overwhelmed Sororitas, they discovered that the Sisters were in the middle of a massive counterattack. And even more recent, on the planet of Vinahorn in the 876th year of the 41st millennium, that's probably the easiest way to say it because it just says 876.40M41. So 41st millennium, 876th year. That's how I'm saying this out loud for you guys. The Basilica of Saint Mariel is besieged by a massive Khorne army led by the Lord of the Blood Tide, a particularly nasty bloodthirster who has blood with his morning coffee. The Sisters of the Order of the Ebon Chalice met the heretics and demons with fire and blade, pushing back with impassioned conviction that is ever present throughout the Sisters of Battle. During their defense and counterattacks, communication with the planet was cut off. And when the Grey Knights were deployed to purify the planet of the demonic incursion, they discovered that every single sister of the Order had been slain. The Sisterhood rose each slain member to martyrdom status. And that's what I mean. You get the same level of epicness that you get from the Space Marines, but they lose. A lot. down to a woman. And in doing so, they actually galvanize the sisterhood to new heights of conviction. It's a narrative I really enjoy, and that actually adds a lot of grounding to the sisters in a universe of armies that all have a notion of being just essentially invulnerable or unending, or any kind of trope you want to use from a sci-fi space opera that fits into Warhammer 40k and all the many races and factions of the universe. Throughout the many centuries leading up to the current timeline of the Targ Imperium in Warhammer 40,000 8th edition, though, the Order of the Ebon Chalice remains the consummate holy order for the Adepta Sororitas. Every order aspires to be the shining examples that the Ebon Chalice portrays, a fitting position for the holy order that carries the name of the matriarch of the sisterhood as a whole. And because of this, it is exceptionally hard to advance from the Schola Progenium into the Order because of their increasingly high standards, as only the elite are allowed entry into the Ebon Chalice. In another interesting parallel to a pre-Horus Heresy Dark Angels, where the Dark Angels were the consummate legion at one time, acting as a blueprint for the many legions and primarchs to come. So as the war in the 42nd millennium progresses, the Order has been present throughout a number of pretty pivotal engagements, committing 4 preceptories, I guess you could think of them as Space Marine companies, to the defense of Cadia, and also aiding in the defense of Vigilus during the War of Beasts. When the Indomitus Crusade was in full swing, headed by Roboute Guilliman, the Order of the Ebon Chalice was there, helping the Primarch in the campaign known as the Road of Martyrs. Elements of both our Martyred Lady and the Ebon Chalice helped to push back the forces of chaos out of portions of the Segmentum Obscurus. With the Great Rift tearing the galaxy in two, the Order of the Ebon Chalice's numbers strain against the constant demand for conflicts throughout the Segmentum, but their presence is felt through each sector that they guard, from their priory strongholds to the planets that they bring the Emperor's redemption to, seeking to purify and end demonic incursions throughout the Imperium. Thank you guys so much for watching this video here today on the Order of the Ebon Chalice. It's really been fun digging into so much of the revised and revamped lore of the Adepta Sororitas on the heels of their big launch this year. If there is a specific order you guys would like to hear about next, please let me know. It'll probably be the Valorous Heart unless I hear otherwise. And I've also been considering doing a video on all of the Imperial Living Saints. Well, at least I guess some more of the important ones like Saint Celestine, Sabbat, and what have you. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all that kind of pish posh. But have a good one and take care.